Good evening and welcome to As It Is Written. We're broadcasting live from the studios of People TV in Atlanta, Georgia. And on behalf of everyone who assists in the production of As It Is Written, I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Tamara Israel and I'll be your host for tonight's program. With me in the studio is the elder priest of the New Covenant Congregation of Israel, Elder Yaakov Ben Israel. Elder, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'd like to invite our audience and thank you for joining us back again for a new season with As It Is Written on People TV. We're very glad that you've tuned in, and we're very glad to be back with you after a brief hiatus of about 3 weeks. So without further ado, I'd like to talk to you about what our lesson will be about tonight. The title of our show is, Are We Living in the End Time? That's a question I'd like you to ponder as we go through scriptures and as we go through graphic evidence that something is amiss in the earth today. Now, when you look at wars and rumors of wars, when you look at weather patterns throughout the earth, when you look at famine, disease, death, and dying, you have to ask yourself, what is going on? Are we living in the end times? And hopefully with the elders' help, we can answer those questions through searching the scripture and proving for ourselves that it is Yahweh that's in control and he's moving things according to what he prophesied thousands of years ago by the prophets. Elder, I'd like to start with the prophecy called the Olivet prophecy by Yeshua, when his disciples asked him several questions and wanted him to tell them, well, when shall these things happen? In other words, what should we be looking for when it's time for you to return? So if you don't mind, I'd like to start with that in the book of Luke, Luke chapter 21, and I'm going to pick this up at verse 1. I'm sorry, verse 5. And as some spoke of the temple, how it was adorned with goodly stones and gifts, he said, As for these things which you behold, the days will come in which there shall not be one stone left upon another, that shall not be thrown down. And they asked him, saying, Master, but when shall these things be? And what will there be when these things shall come to pass? So he talked about the stones of Jerusalem in the temple being thrown down and none left. So when we talk about the end time, we have to look at what Yeshua said and see if these things have happened in history. So can you tell us, first of all, whether or not the stones of Jerusalem were thrown down and what happened with that?
Well, when we look at Jerusalem today, they seem to be praying against what they call the Wailing Wall. But the Messiah said was not one stone be left upon another that shall not be thrown down. And when you read the works of Josephus that was in the city of Jerusalem when it was destroyed, you'll find out that General Titus was over up on the hill looking down at the city of Jerusalem. He said, I tore it down to the bedrock. They took the stones from the temple, and they built the fort of Antonia for the Second Legion that was in Rome, you know. So now they want to call it the Temple Wall, but that prophecy did come to pass with each stone being thrown down, because you have to understand what had happened. Yahweh had told our people what was going to happen to us because of the fact that we didn't do what we were supposed to do. And so he was in the process of kicking us out of the land. Once the Messiah came and sealed a new covenant with our people in his blood, there was no reason for us to stay into the land anymore. So what he did then was, it was time for Judah, the house of Judah, Benjamin, Judah, and Levi, to get out of the land. So in 70 A.D., General Titus came in and destroyed Jerusalem and sold the remnant that was left to the Ethiopians to work in the mines for slaves.
Absolutely.
And we stayed down there for 1,600 years before we came over here to America. But see, what you have to understand is all of this is in the process of putting Yahweh in a position to where his word is being fulfilled. The book got to be fulfilled, verse by verse and prophecy by prophecy. So he's having these things fulfilled to let us know, well, look, I told you these things was going to come to pass. So you have to watch for these things. Now, you was reading in St. Matthew 24, but let me read something else to you. I mean, in John,
Luke.
right? Luke, rather. But let me read something to you in St. Matthew 24. This chapter is normally called by most Hebrews the beginning of sorrows. See,
For who, though?
Yeah, man has had it deliciously up on the earth so far. The Africans has ruled, and then the Arabs ruled, the Shemites ruled with the Arabs, and then the Gentiles came in, and the Gentiles was given the longest period of time to rule. And when you look upon the earth today, under the rulership of all these nations, you can see that the earth is wallowing in sin. Sin is killing the earth simply because of who it is that's ruling the earth. But let me read something to you out of St. Matthew 24 chapter that the Messiah told us to beware of. This is St. Matthew 24 and verse 4. It says, And Yeshua answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying that I am the Messiah, and shall deceive many. Well, see, that's what Christianity has done. See, that's why they got so many different denominations, because the things they profess, they never could get that lie straight.
Right.
Okay.
Christ-like.
Right. Christ-like, but they don't do nothing Christ did.
Right.
Verse 6 says, And you shall hear wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. This is what the Crusades and all of the overturnings of the different kingdoms was all after Rome fell. How they was going to divide up in each other and fight against each other and so forth. And then we came up on the scene with the Crusades, and the Crusades spread that garbage they practiced with the Christians did with the sword. Verse 7, And nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquake in divers places. Well, look all over the earth today. You got more plagues coming upon the earth today than ever in any period of time. But what's happening is this. Yahweh already told us these things are going to happen. And he told us, if you do what I say, 1,000 will fall on your right hand and 10,000 will fall on your left hand, but it won't come near you. Only with your eyes shall you see the reward of the wicked. Well, that verse 7 was alluding to the 7 seals in the book of Revelations. Verse 9, it says, And they shall deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall arise, and shall deceive many. Well, look how many churches, look at how many different denominations that we have upon the earth today, yet still the earth is still in sin. Yahweh is still visiting the earth with his weapons of war. Tornadoes, earthquakes in different places. Do you know we had an earthquake here in Atlanta, and there hasn't been an earthquake up on this mountain here for 100 years. See?
We sure did.
So this let folks know, and it just didn't happen in one part of Atlanta. It happened on this whole mountaintop up here. And what this is doing, this is showing that prophecies are being fulfilled. What Yahweh is saying is this: it's time for you to let my people go. They were only supposed to be there for 400 years, and they're watching for these signs so they come up on the earth so that they'll know how close they are to their deliverance and how much work they have left to do.
Absolutely. Now that we talked about, and we're going to dissect this chapter throughout this program, because when you first got into talking about the destruction of Jerusalem, that was the first prophecy, that our people would no longer be a people, that we would be trodden down and sold into captivity. And when you go back into Matthew, in Matthew chapter 24, again in this prophecy, he talks about watching for when Jerusalem shall be compassed about with armies. Well, even today, there is a wall, a relief in Rome, Italy, and it's called the Ark of Titus. And this ark depicts our people being carried away into captivity, those that remain.
Correct.
Because over 1.3 million Hebrew Israelites were slaughtered. I mean, blood ran through the city like a river. And this was documented in history by Josephus. So you can go into Josephus and understand that the rest of the Jews were sold to the Africans to work in the mines. So truly, if we're talking about what's going to happen at the end, the first thing was that we would be taken out of our land and brought into slavery. And that period was to last for another 2,000 years, because we know that the Europeans were only given 2,500 years to rule the earth.
Correct.
So we're down to the end of the 2,000 years. The end of the Europeans' rule.
The 2,520 years and the 400 years of our captivity that was prophesied in Genesis 15:13 come to an end at the same time.
Absolutely.
That's bringing about, what it's bringing about is Yahweh's word to his servants to let him know, look, I'm in control. Just do what I tell you to do, and I'm gonna save you myself. See, we think we can save ourselves, but we can't. It's the Spirit that has to save us. Let me read something else to you out of Matthew 24 chapter to piggyback on what you was talking about. It says, now, verse 15, when you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop come not down to take any of his clothes out of the house. Neither let him which is in the field turn back to take his clothes. And woe to them that are with child and to give suck in those days. But pray you that your flight be not in winter, neither on the Sabbath day, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there shall no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be short. So we see with the emergence of this new world order, we can very well see that Yahweh is pushing man into allowing Satan to take man into the position to where these people that's calling themselves Christians and everything, they're going to worship a man. They're going to worship a man that's going to be crowned by other men.
Okay, so we're down with one of the prophecies, the fact that we would be taken in slavery. The next talked about war, and you also mentioned that the 7 seals of Revelation speak of first worldwide religious deception and then worldwide wars. Now, in our lifetime, we've had so-called 2 world wars. But listen to this. This is taken from a magazine entitled What the President Doesn't Know. It's the November 2002 issue of the Trumpet magazine. It states, in 1945, the world entered a new age with the successful testing of nuclear weapons in the United States. That same year, their potential for the unleashing of unprecedented horror was revealed with the nuclear destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The world had entered the nuclear age. Ever since, mankind has lived under the threat of the nuclear cloud. Within 10 years, The nuclear powers had stockpiled sufficient weaponry to literally fulfill a startling prophecy of Yeshua the Messiah relating to the end of the age. His disciples asked him, "What shall be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" And Yeshua responded with a detailed prophecy of the events that would lead to his return. War being one of the major ones.
Correct.
And we see our president and his strong men, the lynchmen of his ambassadors, warmongers, saying, well, through war and armament, we can have peace.
Correct.
But there's no such thing. There's no way you can get peace from war.
When each time whatever nation it was came up with a super weapon, they said, this is the weapon that's going to bring peace upon the earth. But when they looked around, other nations had the same weapons that they had. You see, so, but this is keeping things in sort of a balance. You let man destroy off each other on the earth, but it's keeping things. One thing we can actually say, since we have been out of our land between 70 and 100 AD, we as a people are the only people on the earth that haven't been at war with anybody. You see. But we've been in other countries and we fought their wars, but we were still considered second-class citizens. I mean, when they let the slaves go, I say, hey, y'all through, we through with y'all. Cut and let us loose, and we right here in a country that everybody hated us. Everybody hated us, well, 99% of the people, and it's the same thing today. And then they wonder why. Well, they brought us over here with nothing. Then they turn us, we built up the country, then they turn us loose with nothing. Now, and from the way that we've been treated, don't you think Yahweh has something in store for the nations for what they've done to his holy people? And this is the prophecies that we're going through is prophecies that's going to take place to show step by step how our deliverance out of this country is going to come.
You know, the nations are so hell-bent on war that bloodshed has been the mainstay, especially during the time, these 2,500 years that the Europeans have ruled the earth. But that doesn't say that when black men ruled the earth, like the Babylonians and the Africans, they waged war too. But this has been a sadistic type warfare. And we can see that with the taking of Saddam's land, you know, and that's the whole thing. They claim that Saddam is a madman. You know, human affairs have been violated in his regime. Name me what regime in America where our human affairs hadn't been violated. But nobody goes back and talk about
Correct.
that.
I mean, when you go back and check and do the math, you find out that the Euro-Gentiles has killed more of us than Saddam Hussein will ever be able to kill of his own people. I mean, they talked about the death of over 3 million slaves when they was bringing them in the transatlantic slave trade. They had a movie on last night about that's transatlantic slave trade, how they were just throwing folks overboard. When they got sick, just throwing them overboard. And wasn't no grief, no nothing. You know why? These people over here are the people, the only people on the earth that has, when you go back through history, that has ever considered us as not being human beings.
You know, Elder, ever since America unleashed this whole nuclear threat upon the world, now she wants to play RoboCop, and she wants to say, hey, no flesh is going to be saved alive if you don't do what I say, because they have a budget of $386 billion for war equipment. And then it makes you think about, does the scripture say this? Are they truly right now arming for Armageddon? I mean, the scripture says that they would beat their swords into plowshares.
Let me read something to you out of the book of.
Rather, there's plowshares into swords at first.
Let me read something to you about what he told Joel, the prophet, many years ago. This was in the about the 700s BC. I'm going into Joel 3, and I'm going to pick this up at verse 1. It says, this is Joel 3 and verse 1. It says, for behold, in those days and in that time when I will bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nation and parted my land. And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. And verse 6 says, the children of Judah also, and the children of Jerusalem, have you sold to the Grecians. They're talking about the
Gentiles.
Europeans. Yeah. That you might remove them far from their border. Behold, I will raise them up out of the place where you have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head. Verse 9, proclaim you this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears, and let the weak say that I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. There cause your mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of the Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen that are round about. You see, so man think he's doing all of this stuff, but Satan is giving him the power and that he needs, and Yahweh is sitting back watching him.
Right.
Because when you get in the book of Revelation 12 chapter, and you deal with the beast with the 7 heads and 10 horns and 10 crowns, you find out these were kingdoms that Satan brought up on the earth. But who did he bring them up against? He brought all these kingdoms up against us.
Right.
To destroy us because of who we are. And when you look at our people, like Sojourner Truth said, do you think that Yahweh has put these people here through all this problem here for nothing?
That's right.
He's doing it to show man who's boss.
His power.
See, he had to do it once before when he brought the flood upon earth. He had to show man who was boss. And now he has to show him again who is boss, because man is trying to create him a man.
That's true. You know, Elder, for weeks now we've heard nothing but about America's great success in the war against Iraq, which obviously wasn't a war at all, because there were two opponents that were not equaled in warfare. So, you know, while they're sticking out their chest, the rest of the world is saying, you know, you didn't have anybody to fight in the first place. And in terms of finding these nuclear weapons, they haven't found any yet.
Well, what you have to ask yourself is this. If Saddam Hussein really wanted to fight, him, see?
Why didn't he?
Why did he fight? He let the people come into his land and march
right into his
600 miles across the desert.
and
he didn't do nothing.
If he had them, if you had been in my land, I would have used them. Sure. Because as far as I'm concerned, you came into my land illegally, and if I had these weapons of destruction, I would have used them. Just like had America been invaded, they would have used theirs.
Well, didn't they do the same thing to us when General Titus invaded Jerusalem?
Yes, they did.
The Roman Empire was the most powerful kingdom. It was the kingdom, the ruling kingdom upon the earth at that time. And when they came into our land and destroyed us, they didn't think nothing about it. They came in there with all their might and power, and then they built siege machines up to an impregnable place, the Masada.
Right.
They built a ramp. They go up to the, up there just to destroy our people. Why? They wanted to get all of the witnesses of this garbage they were spreading all over the earth with all them pagan deities they were dealing with. They wanted to get the witnesses out of place. So we got kicked out of the land. We got degraded. We got called, our names got lost and mixed up and renamed, and now here we are now. And the Gentiles weren't satisfied with that. Now they're over there raising hell in Shem's land, fulfilling prophecies, though.
Right. But this whole fear of war and nation against nation has touched us here in America for the first time since the bombing of Pearl Harbor, which wasn't even on the mainland at that time. Listen to this. This is coming from an article entitled Arming for Armageddon. It says, "Our world is gripped by fear. Though violence and wars have always stained man's history, fears of such have been exponentially heightened in the aftermath of recent and deadly terrorist attacks of September 11th, the bombing of a nightclub in Bali, the bombing of a Russian government building in Chechnya. In this war on terrorism, no one can really know when or where the terrorists will strike. People in Israel, Sri Lanka have lived day after day never knowing whether a suicide bomber might attack nearby. Same with the U.S. Now that it's reached our borders, our own color-coded system to keep citizens on alert to when terrorist attacks are on the yellow or orange alert. So the world is in a heightened state, and man is fast and furiously building more and more weapons, not knowing that they are going to use these weapons to try and fight against the Messiah when he returns.
Of course, because when you get into reading the prophecies in Ezekiel, it talks about the Battle of Armageddon. It told you it's going to take 7 years to bury, to destroy all the weapons of war that the nation is going to bring into Israel. You see, just to destroy us. But see, what they don't know is this, that it's Yahweh of hosts that's mustering the battle. He's bringing them up to fulfill his prophecies that he's written in this book here to show the world that he is God. Let me read something to you out of Isaiah 13 chapter. It says, actually speaking, this is talking about the destruction of America. But let's get on down into the meat of this. It said, this is verse 9, Isaiah 13 and 9. It says, behold, the day of Yahweh come, both cruel with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. For the stars of heaven and the constellation thereof shall not give their light. Yahweh controls the light. He controls all of that. See, all of these tornadoes and floods and all of this stuff, and even the Bermuda Triangle they talking about. All of these things here is Yahweh's weapons of war. That's what he uses upon man to try to keep man in check. I try to let man know, you know, I'm the one that gave you your rain, you see. So man said, well, you don't have to give me no rain. I got a sprinkling system over there. You see, I can draw water out of the city, but he failed to understand that it's Yahweh that make the water fall in the reservoirs.
That's right.
The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. And I will punish the world for their evil, and the wicked for their iniquities. And I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and I will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. Right? So, you know, it just goes to show you that Yahweh's on the case. See? He keep telling people, don't touch my heritage, Israel. And he keep telling Israel, I said, well, look, this is what I'm going to do before you come, before I send my son to redeem you. You see, but now what you do is you search the prophets. And the prophets got my message to you as to what's going to take place on earth. But see, man think he controls the weather. Man, I see big storm cloud. They were even talking about dropping nuclear bombs in the hurricanes. To disperse them. Man going up dropping iodine on the clouds to make it rain. Man truly, Satan has given man so much power, so much technology, that man truly think he's God. And he's in the process of making him a man. He got that technology. There's no way you could tell me the man ain't going to use it. Ain't no way you going to tell me you got a gun, right? And it's loaded, and you ain't going to shoot it.
I hear you, Elder. You know, we pretty much covered this whole war and rumors of wars. We know that's going on right now, which is the opening of the second seal. So what I want to do is go back to this country called Iraq. People do not understand the history of the ancient land called Iraq. Now, in the scriptures of Genesis, it first called it Babel.
Babel.
What does that mean?
Confusion. That's just what it means, confusion. And when you look at what's going on, and why you think they called each empire that came up Babylon? When the Arabs came in, the people from Iraq, they ruled the Babylonian Empire. When the Medes and the Greek, the Russians and the Iranians came in, the Medo-Persian Empire, they ruled the Babylonian Empire. The Greeks with Alexander ruled the Babylonian Empire. The Romans ruled the Babylonian Empire. So it's still a world full of confusion. You see why? Because the ones that were sanctified and sent to teach the nation, these were the ones that Satan allowed the nations to destroy, because they didn't, as long as one of us is alive,
they got a problem.
They got a problem.
Elder, in Genesis chapter 11, verse 1, the scripture says, and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, go, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. and they had brick for stone and slime they had for mortar. And they said, "Go to, let us build us a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make a name, lest we be scattered upon the face of the whole earth."
Now look at this. Now, let me intervene there for just a minute. Now what you do is this: you compare that with the World Space Program. They're mounting themselves up to heaven.
That's true.
And he told them, though you mount up to heaven, from there I'm going to bring you back down. Though you go into the depths of the sea, I'm going to command Leviathan, he going to bite you.
Now listen what happened. It says, "And Yahweh came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men built. And Yahweh said, Behold, the people is one. All the nations on the earth had one language," correct? "And they have all one language, and this they began to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So Yahweh scattered them abroad from there upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city." So the tower was never completed because Yahweh scattered the nations. But they took their wicked ways with them, because the reason they wanted to build this tower to reach into heaven is because this African, or this Cushite called Nimrod, wanted to lead man to fight against Yahweh so that he wouldn't bring a flood upon the earth anymore.
Sure. And he isn't the only one that has tried to lead man to fight. All the kings of the earth have led their subjects to fight against the true and living God. And when you look, anytime you see a nation that'll keep man's law and take God's law and throw it on the ground, then you know what that's all about. And that's what all the nations have done, because they would keep Yahweh's law.
Right.
Yahweh's law brings peace. You see, and man don't want peace on the earth, because if you got peace on the earth, capitalism is dead. Democracy is dead, you see. And when you look back, and when you look, well, and then you have to understand that one thing too, that democracy is the root of Christianity. You have to understand that too. And when you look upon the earth today, my sister, you see that all of these wicked nations that Yahweh has said was going to rule the earth, all of them, the ones that were supposed to rule in the time have, and the ruling class that's supposed to rule now is ruling, and it's for all one purpose, for Yahweh to show them who is boss, because man has forgotten.
Now, Elder, I want to go a little bit further with this city called the land of Shinar, or Babel, or Babylon, which is now called Iraq. We've had a lot of history in that country, and people don't understand that. The Arabs that controlled the land at that time didn't look like the people that's in the land today. Today you have a lot of Medes and Persians that's ruling, looking more Gentilish or Southern Gentilish than you do the true ancient Shemites, who were dark-skinned people.
Well, that fulfills the prophecy that Noah gave to his son Japheth, that Japheth was going to dwell in the tents of Shem. That's why when you look in Syria,
Jordan,
and Iran, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, all them folks Gentiles.
That's right. That's right. Now, Elder, Nebuchadnezzar, you know, during the news, during this whole Iraqi invasion, you heard a lot about one of his armies called the Nebuchadnezzar Brigade. People don't even associate that with the biblical scriptures. Well, tell us a little bit about Nebuchadnezzar and his dream, because again, Yahweh is moving through the prophets, and everything he said is coming alive. Nebuchadnezzar had a dream that only Daniel could interpret about an image of a man.
And what he saw was, what happened was Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, and he really forgot to dream, and he called for all the soothsayers in the land, and Daniel told him, said, these folks can't interpret the dream for you. He say, this thing here is of the Most High. Now, and what he had saw was a statue.
Right.
And the statue was strange to him. And I'm going to pick this up in Daniel 31, and Daniel chapter 2 and verse 31. And I think we got a phone call, but let me finish this here. This is Daniel 2 and verse 28. It says, when Nebuchadnezzar had inquired of the dream, this is what Daniel told him. He said, but there's a God in heaven that revealed the secrets and make known to King Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. The dream and the vision of your head upon the bed was these. After you, O king, your thoughts came into your mind upon your bed, what should come to pass hereafter.
Right.
And he that revealeth secrets make known to the, unto thee what shall come to pass. Okay, verse 31, it says, You, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before you, and the form thereof was terrible, and the image's head was of fine gold. What happened to the first empire with Nebuchadnezzar?
The Babylonian
Empire. The Babylonian Empire. His breast and his arms of silver, that was the second empire, right? That's when the the Russians and the Iranians came in, right? Okay, and verse 3, his belly. I'm sorry. His belly and his thighs were of brass. Now, that's the Greek Empire. If you notice, this kingdom is getting weaker and weaker. It came down from gold to brass, right?
Correct.
Okay, and this fourth empire here says, verse 34, thou sawest, verse 33, his legs of iron and his feet part of iron and miry clay, right? In other words, it was two different substances that would be mixed in this last one, but it wasn't gold, it wasn't silver, it was iron and clay. So this kingdom wasn't worth nothing, okay? Verse 34, you saw us until the stone was cut out without hand, and smote the image upon his feet, not upon his head. The Babylonian Empire had passed. All the other empires had passed, right? So the feet of this beast here was a divided Roman Empire. Rome fell in 476 AD, and they divided it among themselves. They didn't give us none of it, but the nation divided it among themselves, right? So when the stone was cut out of the mountain without hand, that was the Messiah. And he didn't smite this image on his head.
Right.
He smote him on his feet. But it was still the Babylonian Empire.
Which is the empire that we are currently living in
today.
The 10th of the toe, as a matter of fact.
This is why when you get in a book of Revelation, it called the Roman Catholic Christian Church Mystery, Babylon the Great.
Right.
The mother of harlots.
And it's ironic that America is going over to old ancient Babylon to destroy them, and they are now the daughter of Babylon. We have a caller. Caller, thank you so much for holding and being patient. State your name and your question or comment.
Good evening.
Yes, peace.
My name is Donald, and I respect you and your program.
Thank you, brother.
I would like to know, what is your view? This is not question, not necessarily biblical, but I would like to know, what is your view or assessment concerning the idea of reparations toward black people in this country? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, they promised us reparation, but you have to go back and read the history and find out what that was all about, what they was going to give us. The land that they was going to give to the so-called freed slaves, they freed the slaves, and then we still in captivity. The land that they was going to give the captives was those plantations and so forth that they had confiscated from the South.
Right.
But the only thing that the Secretary of State at that time hated more than Southern bureaucracy was black folks. So that's the reason why he said, no, we're going to give it back to them. You know, we aren't going to give these people anything. So as far as reparation is concerned, what you might want to do, my brother, you might want to go back and look into the Gary, Indiana experience. You might want to go back and get in and look into that, and you'll find out that at one time they poured $3 trillion into that experiment to try to make Gary, Indiana, the black Mecca, simply because it was between Indianapolis, Detroit, and Chicago. So they was trying to make that the black Mecca. So they poured all of that money in there. But what happened was the government saw what was happening in that money. We weren't doing anything. The steel mills went broke. That's what happened. I mean, they shut down. And that closed up that experience. But as far as them paying us reparation is concerned, they don't owe us any reparation. You have to understand that we were put in slavery by our God. And he said we're going to come out without price or money. So we can very well see that, seeing that Yahweh put us in this nation here to chasten us, the reparation that we will receive is you have to get back into the prophets and read the prophets and see what's going to happen. Once the Messiah sets up his kingdom on this earth, his governmental system is put our people back in the land, he told you that all the nations that's left upon the earth are going to come up to Jerusalem 3 times a year to bring 10% of their GNP. And that's the reparation that we're going to be receive. We're going to receive it in righteousness and by the laws of God. Yahweh is not going to give us anything that's unrighteous, and these people don't owe us nothing. The Africans didn't owe us anything when we was in Africa slaves. The Babylonian Empire didn't owe us anything. The Greek Empire and the Roman Empire didn't owe us anything. But the thing of it is that Yahweh said, whosoever touched my people touched the apple of my eye, and I'm going to recompense it to you. I'm going to make the nations come down and lick up the dust of your feast because of the peace and prosperity that they're going to have. And that would be the reparation that we receive. To have peace and prosperity upon the earth for 1,000 years, when man would beat his swords and the plowshares and the spears and the pruning hook. Nation shall not lift up this sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. That will be our reparation, because we will be given eternal life in those new bodies, which will live forever. And you'll be able to see your kids 10, 20, 30 generations of your own family. That's what the reparation is all about, because anything else that they give us, we're going to spend it right back with them.
Well, you know, I'm willing to wait on my reparations from the Most High.
Correct.
You know, because then I know that it will be just reparations.
Right.
The nations will never recompense us, because, as you said, we are homeborn slaves. We sold ourselves into slavery for not doing what Yahweh said, and only He is going to give us our just due. He said when we return that we were going to spoil those who spoiled us and rob those who robbed us. Not physically robbing, but taking back all of their wealth when this country is destroyed. And at the end, when all the nations come against us, Yahweh says, I'm going to show you my glory among these heathens.
Right.
And then you're going to see my power and my might.
Once America's invaded by Russia, he said that he's going to open up her storehouses and she's going to be robbed. And it said that the children of Israel and children of Judah are going to come bringing their gold and their silver with them. So the reparation that we will receive will be at the destruction after this country here is destroyed. And besides, if they gave each one of us $1 million apiece, we give whatever denomination we belong to 10% of that, right? And it's going right back to the same pockets that it just gave it to us.
Well, I want to get back into this old ancient city called Babylon. One of the things that we did, because again, Nebuchadnezzar was the king that also took our people, the Judites, those of us who are here in America as captives today. We were first taken into the land called Iraq as slaves, and that's when Daniel and Ezekiel, all those brothers were in the Babylonian captivity. Daniel was thrown into a lion's den. 3 brothers with him were thrown into a fiery furnace, but Yahweh was with our people. And we heard about the rivers of the Tigris and the Euphrates River during these past few weeks with the invasion of Baghdad. And in Psalms 137, I'd like to read that, because that was something that occurred actually when we went to this country called Babylon. Verse 1, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down. Yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. We hanged our harps upon the willows in the midst thereof. For there they that carried us away captive required of us a song, and they that wasted us required of us mirth, saying, sing us one of the songs of Zion. How shall we sing Yahweh's song in a strange land? And then this not only happened in old ancient Babylon when they had us in captivity, but this is also talking about the daughter of Babylon, America, because the nations did the exact same thing when we came to this country. They made us sing and dance, and today we are still their entertainment as they demand these things of us. Without the children of Israel, there would be no flavor or no spice in the earth.
Correct. We just managed to give up our soul back in the civil rights movement. Before the civil rights movement came, we called each other soul brother and soul sister and soul folks. Then after the civil rights movement, we started having blue-eyed soul brothers and blue-eyed soul sisters, so we gave up our soul to become part of what the nations is about. But let me read something to you here out of the book of Ezekiel that's going to take place here. But I might be getting a little ahead of myself on that, because that's dealing with the last end of the thing when the Messiah comes. But it's some things in Revelations that's going to take place that man has not dealt with yet. And that's the opening of the 7 seals. And my belief right now is that the 5th seal has already, that's my belief now, that the 5th seal has already been opened, but we know that that 4 of the other seals has already been opened. And I want to read something about that, if you don't mind here.
Okay.
This is in Revelation chapter 6, and I'm going to, see, this is what I like about the creator of all things, my God. He said, I don't do anything till I tell my servants, the prophets, first. But you got people walking around here today talking about how much they love God, they're in church all the time doing all these things, and they talking about, well, the Lord can come any day. No, he can't. He can't come till certain prophecies be fulfilled. We must fulfill the book. All the things that was written about us must be fulfilled, the things we have to go through, and all the things that the nation is written about the nation, they have to do. So the nation don't, like you said, he don't mean to, but Yahweh has put it in his heart to do that.
Just like he did Pharaoh.
Right, let him know, I control the rain, I control the wind, I control man, you see. Because you're right, when Moses went down to Pharaoh, what did Yahweh do? He said, I'm going to harden his heart, he ain't going to listen to you. And that's what happened all the time, except that last time when they killed off all the firstborn. Well, let's look at it this way. America is the firstborn of Europe.
Absolutely right.
This is in Revelation 6, and I'm going to pick this up. In order to understand this, you're going to have to pick it up at verse 1. It says, I saw when the Lamb had opened one of the seals, and heard as if it were the voice of thunder, one of the 4 beasts saying, come and see. And I saw, and behold, a white horse. And he that sat on him had a bow, and the crown was given to him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. Well, look at what happened between Pope St. Leo and Emperor Constantine when they had that marriage of state and made Christianity legal in the church. Didn't they go forth conquering and to conquer?
On with Christian soldiers.
Right, marching off to war.
Religious deception.
With the cross of the son of Zeus going on before. Verse 2. It says, and I saw, and okay, we read that. Verse 3, it says, and when he had opened the 2nd seal, I heard the 2nd beast say, come and see. And there went out another horse, which was red, and power was given unto him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another, and there was given to him a great sword. Well, look at what happened in the 1300s.
And all
The
these
Muslims,
wars.
right. The Muslims went on a jihad in the 1300s, conquered all of northern Africa, and then turned around and fought all the way back over to Constantinople, which is Istanbul, Turkey, fought all the way up in there before the Gentiles turned that battle there.
Right.
Okay. Verse 5, now this is when the EU, what they're talking about right now, comes up on there, the New World Order that all the presidents and so forth been talking about. New World Order, one king to rule the New World Order. Verse 5, and when he had opened the 3rd seal, I heard the 3rd beast say, come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. Well, we're talking now, if you got, let me go ahead and read it so we get more understanding. And I heard a voice out of the midst of the 4 beasts saying, a measure of wheat for a penny, and of 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see that you hurt not the wine nor the oil. So we can very well see that there's going to be a famine coming. You know why it's going to be a famine? Because you're going to have that name, that number, or that mark in order to go to the supermarket to purchase any food. So we can very well see that this was being set in place once the EU started to come up on the scene. Now in verse 7 it says, and when he had opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th beast say, come and see. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse. We've heard the story, behold, a pale horse. So we know who he's talking about. This last king is going to come up, this Pope of the Roman Catholic Church. Excuse me, the top Christian. And his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed him. And power was given unto him over the fourth part of the earth to kill with the sword, with hunger, and with death, and with the beast of the earth. So we can see that all these things are coming up simply because Yahweh is allowing Satan to do just what he wants to destroy people on the earth. See, people fail to understand that Satan isn't so much working against Yahweh as he is working for him.
You're absolutely right, Elder.
Everybody works for Yahweh. So we can very well see that Yahweh is talking about bringing some great destructions upon man. But man still don't seem to understand that it's Yahweh that controls everything. Man take too much upon himself. Man think that he is God because he go to sleep tonight and wake up the next morning, so he think he doing all right. But he never quite live his life to the fullest according to the scripture here. You know why? Man really is haters of God, because Yahweh put curbs on man's mind, on what he's supposed to do, what he can and cannot do, and man believe he can do anything. Anytime you get to talk about cloning a human being and making you a man, then you can do anything.
Well, that's what he thinks.
And that's what happened. You remember that's what happened when they was building that tower. They say he said, now that they've started to do this, nothing will be withheld from them.
Absolutely. You know, Elder, there's an article, I'd like to read a little bit of this because, you know, although people know that there's 7% unemployment, and over in Europe there's almost 10% unemployment in places like Germany, some of the more stable economies. So the world is experiencing some dire changes. And man, the way of life that they used to live, this whole debit thing, is going down the tubes.
Correct.
And one of the reasons is because of, like you said, their technology has gotten so out of hand, this Frankenstein, that they've even gotten to the point where they would rather produce food than allow farmers to grow.
Correct.
And all these is upsetting the whole ecosystem.
Right.
Now they tell you about El Nino, and then a few years later it was something else. But you know, when they talk about controlling the weather, they can, you know, give you a prognostication, but they have no idea when things are going to hit, because it's Yahweh that controls the weather. So I'd like to get into that a little bit before we end this show.
Yeah, well, you know, man thinks he's so great that, like you said, you know, they don't want to grow food anymore. They want to create it. So now, in a few years, you'll be able to take a package, a little flat package, and put it in your microwave, push the button, wait 4 seconds, and when it pop out, you have
dinner.
a 15-pound turkey with dressing and all the sweet potato pies and everything right in that little package there. That's what they're feeding the spacemen.
Yeah,
people
you're right.
going into space.
Listen to this, Elder. This is taken from a magazine entitled The Forgotten, and it's on the economy section, and the title of the article is America the Cursed. Rapid fire, flood, drought, tornadoes, earthquakes, massive corporate fraud, carnage on Wall Street, the dollar toppled by the euro, capital flight, continuing fear of terrorist strikes. All this in just the first half of this year. Is it a mere coincidence, or is there a reason for this confluence of curses on America? Just what is going on in America? Even the blindest man in the street must be wondering if something is fundamentally wrong in the U.S. Record-breaking fires of extreme devastation sweeping through the California and the Arizona areas of last year, and southern Colorado, covering the mighty Rocky Mountains with a palm of ash and smoke in the late spring. Massive fires of historic and record-breaking impact turned much of Arizona in a flaming inferno of catastrophic proportions in the early summer. All this came hard on the heels of the earlier devastation wrought by fire in the state of New Mexico. Meanwhile, records crashed as much as southeastern Texas ran awash under the torrid, muddy onslaught of floods in the wake of unprecedented rains. To the north, huge swaths of Montana and Wyoming lay in the grip of grinding drought as eastward of California and the Dakotas. Commentators began using biblical language to describe this confluence of fire, wind, drought, and flood, and its drastic impact on the economy of the world's nation. But yet, no man is taking these things to heart, because the news will start off by saying there was a great earthquake. Oh, but Mother Nature. Nobody attributes these things to the Most High. But aren't these weapons of his warfare?
Of course, these things are weapons of Yahweh's warfare. And if people to go back in the book of Revelation 8 and Revelation 16 and see the climate changes and disasters and so forth that's going to be upon the earth, and how Yahweh is going to visit man with all of his weapons of war. So Yahweh ain't coming here and just get to slapping man around. He's using his power, which is what they call nature. It's really the power of the true and living God. But it was Job that talked about some things about that. Why don't you go back up there and see if you can find that Job about that weather. And I'm looking at Amos and see what I can find out of the book of Amos in here.
All right. In the book of Job, chapter 37, verse 1, it said, "At this also my heart trembled, and is moved out of his place. Hear attentively the noise of his voice, and the sound that goeth out of his mouth. He directeth it under the whole heaven, and his lightning unto the ends of the earth. After it a voice roars. Yahweh thunders with the voice of his excellency." The thunder is just his voice.
Of course.
People don't understand that. And after it a voice roareth, it thundereth with the voice of his excellency, and he will not stay them when his voice is heard. Yahweh thunders marvelously with his voice. Great things does he, which we cannot comprehend. For he says to the snow, "Be you on the earth." Likewise to the small rain and to the great rain of his strength. He seals up the hand of every man, that all men may know his work. Then the beasts go into dens and remain in their place. Out of the south cometh the whirlwind, and cold out of the north. By the breath of Elohim frost is given, and the breath of the waters is straightened. Also by watering he wearieth the thick clouds. He scattereth his bright cloud, and it is turned round about by his counsels, that they may do whatsoever he commands them upon the face of the world in the earth. So it is Yahweh that commands these weather elements: tornadoes, earthquakes, whirlwinds, drought, too much rain, not enough rain. It's Yahweh, and he's always used these things as his weapons of war, saying to man, let my people go.
Right.
I mean, stop sinning, turn back and do what I've told you to do in my law.
We got a lot of things to cover, but I think we've only got a couple of minutes left, and I really wanted to cover. You covered things about that water, but the rain and so forth. And if you read Amos chapter 4 and start at verse 6, that also talks about the rain and so forth. But I want to read something else right quick. This is in Deuteronomy 28, and I'll pick this up at verse 58. It says, "If you will not observe to do all the words of this law which are written in this book, that you may fear this glorious and fearful name, Yahweh your Elohim, then the Lord will make your plagues wonderful, and the plagues of your seed, and great plagues of long continuances, and sore sicknesses of long continuances. Moreover, I will bring upon thee all the diseases of Egypt, which you were afraid." You see, and also every sickness of and every plague which are not written in the book. They have the Asiatic plague and all, and SARS and all that stuff. That not in those categorize that. But you know, we just see that Yahweh controls everything.
Well, thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week at the same time, same station. We appreciate you watching tonight. Thank you, and good night.
And call